What if I told you a noblewoman once believed human blood could stop aging, a royal palace, a hidden chamber, and the cries of young girls never heard again? This is not a fairy tale. This is the real story of the woman whose history is remembered as the Blood Queen. In the year 1560, nestled in the dark, mountainous terrain of Transylvania, Elizabeth Bathory was born into one of the most influential and aristocratic families in Eastern Europe. The Bathory name carried immense power, stretching across Hungary and into the heart of the Habsburg Empire. From birth, Elizabeth was surrounded by privilege, but also by an unsettling legacy. Her relatives were known not only for their status and wealth, but for their eccentricities and cruelty. Her uncle dabbled in alchemy and the occult, her aunt was rumored to practice sadomasochism, and her brother led a life of infamy. Elizabeth's early education included fluency in several languages, and she was highly intelligent, traits that would later be used to manipulate and control. But those who knew her as a child also whispered fits of rage and a disturbing fascination with violence. At just 15 years old, Elizabeth married Count Ferenc Nadasdy, a renowned Hungarian war hero known for his cruelty to Ottoman prisoners. Their wedding, a massive event for the time, included a palace gifted to her, the infamous Chaktic Castle. While Ferenc fought on the front lines of brutal wars, Elizabeth managed the estate and the peasants who worked it. In his absence, it was said that she ruled with an iron hand and a short temper. Stories soon emerged of Elizabeth punishing servants with unusual cruelty for even the smallest infractions. Beatings were common, and torture became a private spectacle behind closed doors. But it wasn't until Ferenc's sudden death in 1604 that the atrocities escalated to something far more monstrous. With her husband gone, Elizabeth's behavior deteriorated rapidly. She isolated herself inside Chaktic Castle, surrounded by a small circle of fiercely loyal and often sadistic servants. Among them was Anna Darvulia, an older woman many believed to be a witch or dark spiritualist who encouraged Elizabeth's worst impulses. Under their watch, young girls began disappearing. Some were peasant children lured with promises of work. Others were minor nobles sent to Elizabeth's estate to learn etiquette and refinement. They never returned. Behind the cold stone walls of the castle, Elizabeth developed a routine, a horrifying ritual of pain, control, and blood. According to testimonies later collected, the girls were stripped, tortured, mutilated, and sometimes bled to death. For Elizabeth, this violence was not random. It was a methodical obsession, and according to some reports, even a beauty regimen. The legend that would immortalize Elizabeth Bathory as the Blood Countess began with a single drop. One day, after striking a maid in the face for a minor error, Elizabeth noticed the girl's blood had splattered onto her own skin. She later claimed that the blood made her skin look younger, smoother. Whether born from delusion, vanity, or madness, the idea took root, and quickly became a dark obsession. Soon, her inner circle of servants began draining the blood of selected victims, storing it in basins and barrels for her baths. These rumors, repeated and embellished over time, became central to Elizabeth's mythology, a countess bathing in the blood of virgins to maintain her beauty. While historians debate the literal truth of these blood baths, the surviving testimonies from witnesses paint a picture that is no less horrifying. Inside Chaktic Castle, Elizabeth constructed chambers of torture with devices designed not just for death, but for prolonged suffering. Girls were reportedly stripped and forced to stand in freezing water, then whipped until their flesh tore. Others were burned with hot irons, had their fingers and genitals pierced with needles, or were bitten by Elizabeth herself, who allegedly tore flesh from their faces and shoulders with her teeth. Some victims were sewn into the carcasses of dead animals or beaten until their bones shattered. She employed grotesque forms of humiliation, psychological torture, and dismemberment. These acts weren't done in haste. They were methodical, rehearsed, and repeated. Elizabeth's victims came in waves. At first, they were lower-class peasant girls whose disappearances could be easily ignored by the local authorities. But as the number of missing grew and families demanded answers, whispers of Bathory's atrocities began to spread beyond the castle walls. Unafraid, Elizabeth grew bolder. She began abducting girls of noble birth, believing her rank made her untouchable. It was a fatal mistake. Nobility was protected by powerful connections, and when noble families realized their daughters had fallen into the countess's hands and vanished, they demanded retribution. But for years, Elizabeth's high social status, family ties to the Hungarian elite, and her cousin's position as prime minister ensured she remained immune from legal consequence. Until one day, when the king himself could no longer ignore the rumors or the bodies. In 1610, after years of mounting suspicion, King Matthias II finally authorized an investigation into Elizabeth Bathory's activities. He sent György Thurzo, the Palatine of Hungary, and a relative of Bathory by marriage, to inspect Chaktice Castle. What Thurzo's men reportedly found inside would chill even the most hardened warrior. According to multiple accounts, they caught Elizabeth in the act, standing over a mutilated corpse, surrounded by other barely living victims, chained and disfigured. Over 300 witnesses and survivors were later gathered to testify. Some spoke of mass graves, others of secret torture chambers, bloodletting rituals, and mutilated remains scattered beneath floorboards and buried in shallow pits across the castle grounds. Despite the overwhelming testimonies, Elizabeth Bathory was never formally tried. Her noble blood protected her from public prosecution. The Habsburg court feared that exposing one of Europe's most powerful families to scandal could ignite political unrest. Instead, her co-conspirators were put on trial and executed, some by beheading, others burned alive. As for Elizabeth, she was confined to a set of rooms in Chaktice Castle, sealed in by brick and mortar, with only a small opening through which food could be passed. She lived there for 4 years until her death in 1614, reportedly found lying face down on the cold stone floor. She was 54 years old. The question that still haunts historians today is this: was Elizabeth Bathory truly the monster legend claims? Or was she the victim of a political conspiracy designed to strip her of wealth and power? Some scholars argue the scale of her crimes was exaggerated, fueled by enemies, misogyny, and hysteria. After all, she was a wealthy, widowed woman in a male-dominated society. But even the most skeptical researchers agree, far too many girls disappeared from her estate, and the documented testimonies are too detailed, too consistent to dismiss. Whether she killed dozens or hundreds, her legacy remains steeped in blood. Today, Elizabeth Bathory is remembered as one of history's most prolific female serial killers, a figure who straddles the line between fact and myth. Her name has inspired novels, films, and Gothic folklore across the centuries. But behind the vampire tales and Hollywood dramatizations lies a very real horror: the calculated cruelty of a woman who used her power not to protect, but to destroy. In life, she was feared. In death, she became immortal. And the castle where she ruled in terror still stands, quiet, cold, and forever stained with the memory of the Blood Countess.